Thank you for pressing start on episode 42 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today we have 2 secret games, followed by a review of our featured game, TOEM. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bo Po, and joining me is my player 2, playing games he wants to review. He's the Indiepedia with physical media. I'm talking about the start pressin', secret game guessing, holding your controller, DiscoCola. What is going on?
Man, I was really worried about running late, but I made it in time for a photo finish. How are you, Bobo?
I'm doing just fine, my Fjallbjorn Scout. Those are references to our featured game, TOEM, and I find it interesting that 2 episodes in a row, we picked games that are black and white, right? Because we had Limbo last time.
Yep.
And these are 2 games, like just side by side. These are 2 games that are overtly opposed personality-wise.
They are polarized like the black and white color we're talking about.
Yes. I mean, one is a grueling and solitary adventure about facing all manner of intimidating creatures with an ambiguous and short-lived ending that asks us to meditate on the loneliness of our own existence. And the other game is Limbo. So I find that fascinating. And this is episode 9 of season 4 of our show. And we have just one more normal episode after this where we'll do our standard review thing. And then we will do our season 4 recap and review episode after that. And you had an idea to just kind of touch on how we're feeling at this point in the season, now that we're kind of this close to the end, and maybe touching base on the completion of the game so far. So how are you doing progress-wise, DiscoCola?
Yeah, Bopo and I are big completionists. I especially am quite the completionist. But this is my lowest completion record for a season at the episode 9 point. I have completed looks like 1, 2 kind of my games. And there's a handful in there, not a handful, there's like 3 or 4 in there that I have no intention of completing. I played on Cancer Trophies, and I'm not interested in finishing those games. But yeah, I've only completed Jack Move, and to a certain degree, I've completed TOEM. TOEM's not on PlayStation, so I don't have to worry about like extra trophies if I don't want to, but I did find all of the stamps and all the animals and stuff to take pictures of.
Nice.
So other than that, all of my games are still incomplete. Some of them have a really, really low percentage number, like Mighty Number 9, which is just hard anyway, and Dark has a pretty low percentage, but those are just like unique trophies.
Yeah, like kind of one-time instance things.
Yeah, like you have to basically do a run of that level specifically for the trophy in mind. It's stuff you're not going to complete on the first run through, most likely. How about you? How's your completion looking?
So yeah, when you're talking about completion, you're talking about like trophies on PlayStation mostly.
For the most part, but it could be however you want to measure that.
Yeah. And you talked about like Cancer Trophies, and just for the listeners' context, DiscoCola has a PlayStation profile dedicated to playing games he knows he won't be able to get the 100% or the platinum in because the game's just so hard, or it's so long, or he's just not interested.
Just not interested. Yeah, This is like Into the Breach and Runbow and Super Hot. So those are games that I'm just not interested in going for that completion.
Totally understand that. And as far as my list, I would say I've completed about half the games we've played this season when it comes to like achievements/trophies. But a lot of games are also PC games, like Steam games, and I don't chase those achievements as much. I used to when I was in my Steam era between like 2014 and 2018. I used to really chase the 100%. Now I really only care about trophies on PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of these games just aren't on PlayStation. So like Nuts, for instance, was a secret game of mine. That's not on PlayStation. I don't remember if I got all the achievements. I might have. But then there's stuff like Mighty Number 9 that is just so long and complicated that I'm never going to want to chase that. And I didn't enjoy that game enough to want to do that. Same with Super Hot. Super Hot has a lot of challenges. You have to play the game many times, doing different things each time. I don't think I will ever try to go for all of the atomics in Atomic Run Gun Jump Gun.
I would hope not.
That is insane.
Oof.
But I've gotten the 100% in Abzu and Chicory: A Colorful Tale. Let's see. White Ocean Big Jacket was just kind of a very short experience with not really any achievements to chase. The Sexy Brutale, I got the platinum in that. And then I also got the platinum in the secret game I will talk about today. I got that yesterday. So I guess I'm revealing that it's on PlayStation. So minor spoiler. And then I 100%ed Limbo a long time ago. And I got the platinum in TOEM on the PS5 version as well the other day.
Oh, I forgot that it's on PS5.
Yeah. I don't know why it's not on PS4. Like, it should be.
I don't want them to, but at a certain point, you do have to just like stop focusing on it.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there, but I get it.
Yeah. I think we're kind of at a split right now where some developers and publishers think, okay, we're like 3 years into the new generation. Let's just focus on the current generation.
Yeah.
And others are just like, well, we might as well work on a quick port for the PS4 folks.
Right.
But
and it happened even sooner with like physical copies too. So like they've been dropping the PS4 versions for about 1.5 years, 2 years now.
Yeah. So you're kind of used to that idea.
Yeah.
And, even for simpler looking games like TOEM, it still takes time to optimize a game for another platform.
Yeah.
Even if it's just going back a generation, that can take time. So, if a platinum is attainable in a relatively small amount of time during our season, I will go for it instead of putting it off. Because if I put it off.
Man, if you put it off, I still have like season 1 and 2 stuff that I never. Yeah.
I know, especially if it involves like another playthrough. And that's where it gets tricky because you have to start spending time on the games for the next episode. We can't just keep playing the same games for weeks and weeks. We got to move on.
Yeah, but like as far as like old seasons, I have pretty close, and I didn't have to spend a lot of time in between seasons. I still have like Manifold Garden, Transistor, Bug Fables, a couple in Celeste and Slime Rancher, and that for the most part that's it. I still have one more in Solar Ash too, but
yeah. So that just takes time sometimes. I am impressed with both of us getting the platinum in Cult of the Lamb because that just takes like a good, 18 to 25 hours.
Yep.
That's a lot of time.
It is.
So we both got that done. And I think we did that because we both loved it.
It was really approachable and fun to do anyway.
Yeah. So kind of mixed. Every game's different. Every game can be on a different system. So it's just kind of one game at a time. I do that evaluation. And then did you want to add anything about like playing games in new ways or places?
Yeah.
I've noticed that you've jumped to Switch more. You've done a couple PC games here and there.
Yeah, some of them are like we talked about with TOEM, not on PS4, which is my main platform of choice. So I hopped on Switch for that, but I'm also playing a lot more digital games. We had a lot of sales recently for like digital only titles, and even if I know they have a physical, I'm less hesitant to approach these like really good deals. Like if a game that we're gonna play for Underplayed is $3, I'm gonna buy that instead of like, well, I know there's a physical out there, so I'll go hunt it down, and then maybe I won't like the game. I do still think that if you can buy a physical copy of a game, that it is probably the better way to own a game because you have more options. You can resell it, you can keep it. Mm-hmm. If it's taken away from you digitally, you can still play it.
Yep, and that does happen.
I do still think that is the better option, but it's just not feasible all the time. So I've been playing some digital only stuff, and I've been buying even more digital only stuff that may get a physical copy, but may not.
Maybe your support of the digital version will kind of help get the momentum going on a physical version.
That'd be great.
I mean, every little bit helps. And I do the same thing. I kind of keep an eye out for games I know we will feature on our show, and I'll add them to my wish list. And sometimes those sales pop up where I'll get Mighty Number 9, like 3 months before we reviewed it, I got it for like $2 on Steam because it was 90% off. Yeah. So very thankful for those. And we've seen lots of sales on Steam, especially focusing on certain categories of games, like Wholesome Games recently had their first sort of showpiece sale where it's just branded as Wholesome Games. It's a lot of cozy, kind-hearted games. I picked up a lot of games during that are digital only. So some of them might be my secret games in an upcoming season too. And hey, if you're enjoying Underplayed right now, please consider giving us a follow and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you haven't already, it takes just a few seconds and goes a long way in showing your support of the show. With that, let's move on to our secret games.
Secret games.
Secret games.
I know you're playing without me.
Secret games.
Well, I'm here to tell you, baby.
Secret games.
I've been playing too.
Secret games.
In this segment, we each review an indie game we've been playing in secret since our last recording. We do not discuss our picks in advance. We keep them a surprise for this very moment. Why are they a surprise? It's just fun that way for us in this moment right now. We can choose any indie game as long as we haven't reviewed it before. So DiscoCola, you've been playing something the past few weeks. We will start with you. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 42 of Underplayed.
All right. My secret game is one of those games I bought before the abandonment of the 3DS eShop.
Oh.
It comes from a little developer named Daisuke Amaya under the name Pixel, and my secret game is called Ikachan.
Ikachan.
Yes.
I don't think I've heard of this.
Okay, well, I have not sent you a trailer because a trailer doesn't exist.
Oh, no.
I've sent you a very short review that someone else has done that I think does the best at showing you the game.
Okay, so is this Ikachan?
Yes.
I
I don't know if it's Ikachan or Ikachan. I'm not fluent in Japanese, friends. I'm sorry. But I believe Ika is squid. So
Okay.
I think. But anyways, you can check that out as I go on.
Sounds good.
So, to my understanding, Ikachan started out as a freeware game before being ported to 3DS by Nicalis. Nicalis is famous for working on Cave Story and The End Is Nigh.
Nice.
In Ikachan, you play as Ikachan, a squid? Question mark? But you have more like cat ears.
Yeah, you do. You have like 4 tentacles.
Yeah.
And you have a cat head.
Yes.
Interesting.
You wake up underwater in what seems to be a series of underwater caves. Shortly after waking up, you encounter what is apparently a sea urchin that explains the sort of social dynamics of the area, stating that you need to locate your pearl quickly. Allegedly, if you're seen out and about without your pearl, you could find yourself in trouble with someone named Ironhead. He's kind of the boss. He sort of has like vibes similar to a bit of a mob boss. As you explore your relatively limited map, you meet more sea urchins that will ask you for favors, all of which will essentially point you in the direction that you need to go to ultimately beat the game. The first step along the way grants you access to a pointy hat, and this sort of completes your transformation into a more proper-looking squid. To reveal, though, at this point, any more about the character of Ikachan would be a spoiler. But it's not too long before you realize that in addition to having something of a mob boss and Ironhead, that food supply and earthquakes are also a bit of a problem in the area. So can Ikachan save this social ecosystem? Maybe.
I'm not going to make any bets on it. 'Cause who knows?
For mechanics, your movement is all done with swimming. So this is done by tapping like the A button or whatever to create sort of micro bursts of momentum, and then holding a directional button to move either straight or diagonally upward. You let off the A button to allow Ikachan to slowly sink downward. So you're a squid. Think swimming like a squid would, except that you cannot go horizontally. You also have to control your momentum. That's a big part of the game here. Sometimes this means pressing the direction opposite of your travel to sort of like slow yourself down if you find yourself moving too quickly to the side. Your caves are tight, and some of the ceilings and floors are covered in spikes that will reduce your health. You also use this momentum to attack other non-sea urchin sea creatures with your pointy hat. So this means you need to be able to get under them because, like I said, you can't swim sideways. However, some enemies will be too strong to attack until you level up. So speaking of leveling up, there is a very limited level up system in Ikachan. You gain experience by either defeating these other creatures or by eating food that's littered throughout the world. But these food pieces are limited and do not respawn.
Oh, they're like meteor dust.
Yeah, a little bit. There's a lot more of it than meteor dust, but yeah. As you level up, you gain more HP with each level, and you can attack higher level enemies. But the enemy differential rarely made a difference for me, so I don't totally know how wide that like delta gets of enemies that you can't attack. I could always attack them anyway.
Okay.
So, speaking of HP, you can be damaged by enemies and spikes. HP can be healed by sleeping inside of a bivalve shell, and this is sort of like a rest station. This will totally heal your HP. You can also save your game here. It's like a Hollow Knight bench.
Sure.
Your HP will also recover as you eat food or if you level up. But like I said, all of those food items are limited. So if you want to leave them throughout the world so that you can pick them up and heal your HP without having to go back to a bench, that is an option for you. There are certain obstacles like breakable blocks or small water currents that will force Ikachan in a certain direction. Most of Ikachan is using your abilities and momentum to get through all of these obstacles and explore every corner of this relatively small map. This is probably my shortest secret game to date, and so there isn't too much more to really say about it from there. So, what did I enjoy about this second brief aquatic adventure, Popo? The social structure and the roles of the sea urchins and other characters is actually surprisingly complex for a game this size. To the point where I actually even found myself connecting with some of the sea urchins and even Ironhead at the end. You wouldn't really expect that in a game that only took me about 2.5 hours, but there was a little bit more depth than I anticipated.
Yeah. You mentioned like this is the second underwater game. I assume you're talking about Abzu.
Yes.
And like that's another short game where we had some connections going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. I like that Ikachan isn't a squid, but we still found a way to be like a squid. There are only about 3 songs in the game, but they're all good. Unfortunately, the one main thing is just the one main theme is just on a massive loop throughout the whole world. So you have the main theme, which is good. You have a boss battle theme and like the end of the game theme, essentially. But those other 2 you're only hearing for like a minute or 2 at a time. The main theme is playing throughout pretty much the rest of the game.
Okay.
But they're all good. I like that the food items in Ikachan are a pretty good guide for where to go next. You can't do much in Ikachan. One of the few things you can do is level up, so getting to these food items is a great draw and helps me discover where I need to go next. I like that the movement makes a lot of sense for playing as a squid, but, and here's the dislike section, doing the actual moving around as Ikachan is pretty tedious. I can sort of get into flows at times, and it feels really cool to get through narrow caves of spikes without taking damage, especially if I'm going really fast. I feel super awesome when I'm doing that.
Sure.
But that's something you only do for small stretches at a time. Whenever I'm trying to time my attacks against like a blowfish or jumping crabs, getting the timing right is just a much bigger chore than it should be. Yeah,
so watching this gameplay video you sent, it's reminding me of being in underwater levels in 2D side-scrolling platformers like, Super Mario World, where you're underwater, which isn't always my favorite thing, but you're never doing it for too long. So would you say it's kind of like that feeling, but just for an extended period of time, which kind of wears down after a while?
A little bit, but for some reason, it still seems like you have even less control because you can't walk on the seafloor like Mario can. You
Sure.
can't swim, directly sideways like a squid should be able to do. You do eventually unlock the ability to kind of do that,
Yeah.
but it's not worth doing most of the time.
You're kind of more like a blooper from Mario.
You are
right? Where those
way
always
more
go,
like a blooper.
those go in diagonal directions in very erratic ways. And I think this has a little more nuance to the movement
It does.
compared to that. You're not like shooting dramatically. You can make tinier movements,
Yeah.
it looks like.
But definitely closer to that than Mario. Another thing I don't like, there are 2 points in the game where progression is just halted. The whole map of Ikachan is kind of like 2 different loops. It's like one smaller loop inside of an even larger loop. So you have sort of a fork at both edges of the map that lead to the 2 different loops. And like I said, it's not very big, but the movement is a bit of a drag. And when I went through the full map loop both times these times just to find that what I was supposed to do is actually talk to specific sea urchins to trigger an event that would open up part of the map. And that's all I was missing. And like, I swear I even talked to one of those sea urchins while I was looking for where I needed to go next. So
just
it
like
just
the
didn't
tiniest
trigger.
little trigger
Yeah.
didn't happen. Okay.
And so I had to look it up both times and it was the same solution both times. That's kind of I don't like that as a solution, kind of a drag. The last thing I don't like is that there are a series of missions that you do about 3/4 of the way through the game where you're essentially working for what you are led to believe is the antagonist. And after having to do what felt like evil for a comical number of times in a row, I thought the game was trying to tell me that maybe I had another option. I don't have to do these missions. It felt so bizarre to have to do this one after another, and do basically the same mission for the antagonist. It didn't feel right.
Sure.
So I was like, I thought I was missing something. But I wasn't, you're supposed to do these missions, and it didn't feel quite right. Felt unnatural. It was like someone was explaining the joke while telling the punchline, and then it wasn't a joke anymore. It felt so weird.
Yeah.
So I didn't like getting to that point in the game. There are a few shortcuts that you can open up along the way in Ikachan, like you can in a Metroidvania style game. But this game could use way more. I think that's one way that this Ikachan could improve by a lot, is just a couple more shortcuts, just to be a little more interconnected in those loops. But that does it for dislikes. It only sounds like a few dislikes, but like I've said, there isn't really much game here. And I overall was actually kind of bored through most of my adventure. Ultimately, Ikachan is an attractive adventure with a surprising story to be told, but I'm not sure the game totally holds up. However, if I think about playing it back when it was first ported to 3DS, I may have liked it even less at that point in my life.
Interesting.
I don't think Ikachan is bad, but let's just say I'm glad that I don't often take control of a squid or a jellyfish or an octopus or something. Really, movement is the only thing that holds this game back for me. I do wish more people could play it, but the powers that be have made bad decisions about the 3DS eShop. If you've already downloaded it, I do think you should give it a shot. It does stand out from other eShop exclusives that I'm familiar with. But regardless of how I feel about it, you can only get this through illegitimate means. If you're willing, you're really only going to be out 2 hours if you do pick this up. But all I will carry with me about Ikachan is how I was able to interact with some of these urchins on my brief visit. For me, Ikachan feels a 6.0 feels about right.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting that you're picking kind of a shorter game, a really obscure game compared to other indie games. And I'm just curious, like, even though this isn't your highest score, it's not something you found particularly compelling all the way through? Do you see a good value for like dollar per hour of game time in here?
I think so, and I think it's really interesting to see what Pixel was working on before they did Cave Story, and seeing where that sort of started, because it's not a bad game. It's a well enough constructed game that it still deserves to like exist, be accessed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it was not expensive. I don't recall what I paid for it, but
Probably just like a few bucks.
Couple bucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how a couple of the smaller games were that I bought on the eShop. They were more indie in nature before it closed down.
Yeah, and when I was like scrolling through the entire eShop for like, okay, what are some indies on here? There's a lot of indies on there, but it's like clones of other games but done poorly.
Right.
Ikachan is sort of its own thing.
Yeah, so you might as well play the thing that's unique,
Yeah.
one of a kind. Does this change your perception or your interest level in Cave Story? Because that's a game that I don't think either of us have finished. I have played a little bit of it and I dropped off, but it is a game that's on our featured game possibilities list
Yeah.
for someday. So how do you feel about Cave Story after playing this?
I don't think it really changes my interest level in it. I still kind of really want to play Cave Story. I think Cave Story is attractive. As I understand it, the main characters are androids. One of them even kind of looks like Roll from Mega Man. So I'm
Big
still
bonuses for you.
Yeah, I'm still really interested in Cave Story. If anything, like the music that's in Ikachan, limited as it was, has me more interested in what maybe Cave Story's music is like.
And sometimes, we go for variety with our secret games in different ways. It's not always the genre. It's sometimes like the platform that we play the games on, or it's how old the game is. And here's a
Yeah.
game that's like, a decade old? And so I think that your variety here is really inspiring. I think that's
Thanks.
really fun. So good poll, good kind of hidden title that I've never heard of and probably wouldn't have heard of without you.
Yeah.
So thank you for talking about it.
Yeah, the version of Ikachan I played was available on 3DS, and I think you might still be able to get the freeware version out there. But I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't know how to go about looking for it.
It is time for my secret game. My secret game is called Falcon Age.
I have heard of this,
You've
actually.
heard of it?
Yes,
Sweet.
a few times.
Cool. I just sent you the trailer.
All right, I will check this out while you go on.
So Falcon Age is a 2020 adventure game developed and published by Outer Loop Games. I think this might be their first game. I'm going to read the game synopsis from the Steam storefront. Quote, bond with a baby falcon and go on an adventure. Falcon Age is a first-person, single-player action-adventure where you'll play as Ara in her fight to reclaim her cultural legacy in the lost art of falcon hunting against a force of automated colonizers, end quote. So here's another game about humans versus machines.
Nice.
And now this time the humans are the good people, right? So we're flip-flopping a little bit from unsighted to this. But this game opens on your character, Ara. She's in jail for a minor infraction. So it's kind of an interesting start because you're in jail, and you don't really know why. And the reason why isn't a big deal. The point is she's in jail because she did something very minor.
Mhm.
That's how oppressive these prison people are. And these people capturing her are the Outer Ring Company. They are a mining company that sort of sucks all the resources out of every planet they visit. And Ara's planet is yet another victim of them.
Privatized incarceration. Awesome.
Yes. And this is yet another bad corporation from our season 4 games, right? Because we had, what was it? Are they called Cubicle from Going Under? We had Glug from Sludge Life.
Yeah, let me pull up the list here.
We had 2 others.
Yeah, we
DiscoCola.
did.
I want to say there were 2.
Dandara, or not Dandara, Vernal Edge had a corrupt religion.
Oh, there you go. Okay. That one wasn't even
Jack Move
on my
had Monomind.
Yes.
Was the super corporation
yes. And then you could probably make arguments for a few others, but just an odd trend. I guess you need a villain, make him a corporation
there. Yeah.
with bad intentions. And Ara is basically every day forced to take this pickaxe and go mine ore on the planets. And that ore is then used by the Outer Ring Company, or the ORC. She befriends this falcon who perches on her window, and she feeds it some of her rations. And the falcon grows bigger over the course of a few weeks or months, to the point where it can help Ara escape from prison. This is the opening event of the game. This is the opening set piece where, you're now ready to escape the prison. And there are combat machines and drones everywhere run by the ORC, and that's who you're fighting and defeating. And after Ara and the falcon escape, they return to her home, and Ara reunites with her auntie, who is, from what I could tell, her closest family member. And auntie is an experienced falconer who instills the values of falconry into Ara. And Ara and her falcon need to bond a bit more. And after that, she starts taking missions from her auntie to go out to these areas that the ORC have taken over on their planet. Like, they're usually refineries that they're using to mine all the resources. And the goal is to dismantle their operations, basically, to sabotage what's going on by fighting the machines.
Nice.
And so Falcon Age's core gameplay is Ara with her falcon. You're in the first person. The falcon perches on your arm, and you can send it out to attack things and to collect things. And Ara herself has a baton that has sort of an energy whip that you can use to unlock doors and break open containers, and also to stun enemies. Combat is usually this combination of sending out your falcon to attack a robot and maybe open up a weakness, and then you go up with your baton and you whack on that robot until it is destroyed. And so Ara and her falcon are always essentially a team. This world has these small gatherings of NPCs too, and they can give you quests that usually involve collecting items. There's also a currency and trading system. There's this one primary merchant that I found who can sell you everything in the game, and it's mostly upgrades for your falcon. And you can sell them junk to get money. You can grow and collect produce as well. You can grow things like turnips and gourds and potatoes. And you can also use your falcon to hunt prey like foxes and chickens and get their meat. And you can cook produce and meat together to make little snacks that you can feed your falcon. And that will help heal your falcon faster. Sometimes those snacks give your falcon like a temporary defense bonus of some kind. And the game is really about just getting these missions from your auntie, traveling on foot to all the refineries, and eradicating the ORC operations with the help of your falcon, who's always with you. And I will make a review note up top here. This game was designed to be played in either VR or non-VR situations, sometimes on VR storefronts, or just when this game is by itself. It's really heavily advertised in that VR context.
Right.
And this is something I had to look into when I was researching this game. But basically, you can totally play this non-VR, which is what I did. So I cannot bring the experience of playing it in that VR mode, but either way is valid. Just wanted to make that note up top. So here is what I liked about Falcon Age. First and foremost, the concept and the general conceit of using a falcon. Like for a game called Falcon Age, you would hope that there would be care and attention toward making the falcon awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making the falcon detailed and interesting. And that's very much the case in Falcon Age. Outer Loop Games loves this falcon. I can tell they spent so much time on this falcon, making it detailed, making it cool. You can collect all kinds of cosmetics to put on your falcon. Like you can give it a bowler hat and a monocle and a bow tie.
Yeah.
Like you can make it like a posh, fancy falcon as just one option. All the upgrades in the game are things you equip onto the falcon too. So like you can get a sonar device that helps it detect landmines. You can give it sharper claws so that it can dig up treasure boxes. And you can find all kinds of fun interactive items for the Falcon too. These are kind of just like novelty items that sit in your inventory. And whenever your Falcon is perched on your arm, you can bring these things out like a skateboard that it will do a little trick on. Or you can give it like a set of weights that it will lift or a set of balls for it to juggle.
Oh, man.
And these are items that you'll get sometimes from like treasure boxes or just as a reward for doing someone's really quick quests. And it's like not providing like a gameplay benefit. It's just kind of a fun little thing you can give to your bird to do a little flourish for a second.
Dude.
So I found that was very impressive that they went to those lengths to like give you all these fun interactions. You can also pet your Falcon and do things like give it high fives and fist bumps. And those sorts of like petting actions will heal your Falcon if it gets damaged in combat.
Oh, dang.
And sometimes you send your Falcon out into the sky and it gets shot with like darts. Like there are these guns that detect it and shoot it with darts, and it will get down to low health and then it can't do anything. And you have to recall it. And then you pull out the darts from your Falcon and that heals it. So there's a lot of ways that you're just seeing animations with the Falcon, interacting with the Falcon. And then there are like the practical moves where you're sending your Falcon out to attack something. And maybe while it's on its way to somewhere, you're using your baton to hit an enemy. So it feels like you're cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like even though this is a single player game, I'm not alone because there's like different parts of the combat going on at the same time. And I think that's really cool. The world is visually pleasing, especially when you look up in the sky. The colors are really lush. The game uses a lot of distant landscapes, and looking at those is always appealing. The character designs of the world are vivid and detailed. And this is both the people you're talking to and your Falcon itself. And then the philosophy of Outer Loop games is something I love too. So this is sort of part of this game, but it's also outside the context of the game. But it's very much informing what's going on inside the game. And this developer is a minority-led studio with a focus on creating stories about underrepresented people.
Okay.
That's what you can read about on their site. And so this is actually something that drew me into wanting to play this game. And I think it will be a draw for many other people too. And so I just think that is great representation here of like people that you don't see in a lot of other games of this size by a team of this scale. So I really admire that. So those are all my likes with Falcon Age. I love the spirit of this game. I love the heart of this game. I can tell that this team cares about this Falcon and stuff. But when I get to my dislikes, unfortunately, I do have quite a lot of like small disappointments going on throughout this experience. And the first thing I note is just that the story here doesn't have a lot to offer. Things can kind of just feel surface level. There's not a lot of characterization to the people you meet. And Ara herself is basically expressionless. She almost feels like a blank slate. It feels like people talk to her. They tell her about things at her, but the things she says back don't really express a lot of opinions or anything. There's not a lot of depth to her. And I just wish, I think there's an opportunity there.
Can I ask a question early?
Yeah.
So she is talking back. Is this like dialogue options that you're picking from, or is it predetermined like dialogue?
Yeah, so there are dialogue options. Most of the dialogue is just text on screen. Sometimes characters will speak a few words of their dialogue back at Ara, but I don't remember hearing Ara speak, and the things that she says back are very generic. And this is kind of jumping ahead to a point I was going to make, which is that a lot of this game doesn't feel fully formed, and some of that is when you're talking to characters. When you have dialogue options, you sometimes have like 2 or 3 options. And none of those options really lead to other outcomes. So that's another way it feels a little shallow. Like you're giving me these dialogue options, and sometimes the context or the meaning feels like it could lead to a different outcome, but really you're just heading to the same place. And so that's where I just ask, like, what's the point of letting me choose between 3 options if the quest is going to end up being the same? Again, it's just like all these features of the game that don't feel fully baked. Another example of this is the produce and the cooking. You make those snacks that you feed to your falcon. And I found that the effort to do that just wasn't worth it. It wasn't enticing enough. I might, go hunt some prey, grow a potato, cook something, and then it's in my inventory. Then I have to take it out of my inventory. I have to make sure my falcon's on my arm. And then I feed the falcon the thing, and it might extend its health bar a little bit, or it might add a temporary 25% resistance to a certain kind of damage. And it's like, I didn't want to do that. It's not worth the effort. So as a result, I just ended up playing this game without all that stuff, and I was just fine. I got through without needing to feed my bird snacks. I did cook snacks to get some trophies. That's all, though. I didn't go outside of that. And then the end comes quite suddenly with not much emotional payoff. The Outer Rim Company, they don't really have anything interesting to offer in terms of a face. You're just battling kind of like these generic looking robots. So there's not much characterization to them either. The combat really doesn't have a ton of variety. And there's a lack of tactility too. Like when you're swinging your baton around, it doesn't feel like your melee hits are connecting. It feels kind of just like you're swinging and things are happening, but there's that lack of impact that's happening.
That might be a symptom of focusing on VR first, too,
It
where you
might
have to
be.
have maybe a greater margin for something like that.
It might be. And I had a feeling like you might bring up the VR side or ask about it. And I could maybe see myself being interested to try out that side of the game, just as a different feeling. I think that trailer I showed you shows the VR stuff, like you're picking up the ingredients, throwing them in the pot to cook them. Otherwise, it's just like pressing a button if you're playing the non-VR mode. So that's how things kind of change. Maybe that feeling of using the baton is different in a way that's more interesting in the VR mode, but I can't speak to that. And then, the world around Ara and the Falcon, it is pretty impressive in scale. The landscapes are pretty gorgeous, but as you're walking through them, there's just not a lot to find. They kind of feel empty. It feels like there could be more distractions along the way as I'm on my way to the goal of a quest. And then, using your Falcon can be slow. There are times where I send out my Falcon, I want to recall it, and it can get stuck on things. If it's too far away, it might not want to come back to me. When it does come back to me, sometimes it takes 15 or 20 seconds, and I'm just kind of sitting there waiting for it to happen. So I think that just needs to be faster. And it's mostly with the recall. Sending it out generally feels a lot better. And then there are graphical errors that I ran into too. There are some textures that don't connect. There's just parts of the world where there's a hole in the world and I can see through the game, and textures will pop in. There are lots of walls and objects that can just be walked through without any physical boundaries.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's hard to get immersed in this game with all these issues. And then just the construction of the world and how you're walking back and forth between all these places can be a little tiresome because there's no fast travel. You end up walking back and forth between the same handful of places a lot. And it can just get repetitive, especially when there's not a lot in the world to explore and discover when these places are so big. So it kind of feels like these big, empty, open spaces that you're forced to walk back and forth between several times. And so this is something where, there could be more shortcuts to unlock. I'm always a fan of that. And maybe that's something they could explore here. So overall, Falcon Age, is a game centered around falconry, and that's a really fun idea. I think this is rough in a lot of small ways that adds up to a game that doesn't feel very polished. The world is visually pleasing. There are many flourishes with the falcon at the center of everything. The falcon feels worshipped by these developers, and I love that. But the story and the emptiness around it make it difficult to get invested in Falcon Age for me. So this is one that I'm having a tough time rating because this game has heart, right? I love the philosophy of this game. I really do like the things that I pointed out as praises quite a lot. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
And it's playable on PC, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation 4, which is where I played it.
I don't have too many questions. A lot of what I'm seeing is, and also some of the things that you're talking about with like wanting more distractions along the way, and breaking through textures and stuff like that. It's reminding me a lot of my experience with Slime Rancher, and maybe not quite to the same degree, but yeah, maybe just like small caches of stuff you can find along the way.
Yeah.
Maybe a better diversity in the landscape, which you can kind of explain away with Slime Rancher because it's such a fantastical world. This feels a little bit more grounded, so maybe it's not a realistic possibility here within the vision of the game.
Yeah,
but
the idea is that this corporation is sucking up all the resources. Everything is kind of like a desert setting, which you can kind of see in the trailer. And I kind of like that setting because the colors are vibrant still. I don't think I was itching for like more biomes or anything like that. It would have been interesting if they expanded the world that way. And there are caches and things to find. There are treasure boxes, but they might give you a few scraps to sell for resources, or they might give you a recipe card for a kind of food that you can cook. But again, I didn't find the food enticing.
Yeah, I think there's this, I'm going to call it an epidemic of games that need to have cooking and or farming in them when they don't need to be
Right.
there.
I did appreciate that like every major place you stop at has a farming plot. And so you might plant potatoes and turnips and, other things. And then you might leave. It takes a little bit of time for that stuff to grow. And you might leave and come back later and you see, oh yeah, my stuff grew. I grew that stuff and now you can pick it up. But I was mostly using that stuff to sell, to buy some outfit items for trophies.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Yeah.
So
Do you unlock any mobility upgrades for your person? Do you get to move faster in any way? You're talking about no quick travel points.
no, but you can sprint in this
Okay.
game. And, I was sprinting everywhere. And, the sprint's pretty nice. But yeah, all the upgrades I ran into were mostly like giving your Falcon more abilities that in turn help you. So,
Okay.
but yeah, nothing that makes you go terribly faster.
And then my last question is, from one juggler to another, how good of a juggler is the Falcon?
Falcon's pretty good. It does 2 balls in 1 claw, which is, more of a beginner pattern, but impressive that a bird could do that,
Yeah.
right? The bird does things with all those novelty items that are, no other bird could probably do. So that's impressive.
Listeners, we haven't talked about this on the show. Bopo is quite the experienced juggler, and
Yes.
even just saying those words doesn't really do it justice.
Yes,
my
I've
friends.
been juggling for, probably close to 20 years now, and I've like juggled as a performance art in much of that time too. And so I love seeing juggling come up in games. And in this game, you get the juggling balls from a juggler in one of the like small encampments, and they talk about the philosophy of juggling in a way that's like so insightful and inspiring to me as a juggler. So I
Heck
love
yeah.
that moment.
Heck yeah, there's a juggler on that dev team, my friend.
I wonder. And so I actually found that surprising and like very personal for me. Loved it. I actually captured a clip of that on PlayStation so I could look at it later. And then I want to let you know that Outer Loop Games is gearing up to release Thirsty Suitors later this year. And that's been getting a lot of attention at indie game showcases. I'm still interested in that game. I am rooting for Outer Loop. I want the best for them still, even though I didn't click with Falcon Age as much as I could have. And there's a fun reference in Falcon Age to one of your secret games.
Yeah, you mentioned this.
Yes, I messaged you about this vaguely. There is a game of yours that you reviewed as a secret game that has a reference in this game. These are from different developers. It took me by complete surprise. I think with like 10 guesses, I don't think you would be able to guess the secret game this game references.
Yeah, probably not.
This game has the transistor weapon from
Ooh.
Transistor
What?
from Supergiant Games.
Cool.
And it's not something you equip. It's not something the bird can even equip. It's one of those fun novelty items. You just pull it out of your inventory and it like plays with it a little bit and then like sticks it in the ground or something.
Nice.
And I think there's even a line that references Red or something.
Wow.
The main character from that game.
Neato.
And that took me by surprise. I go, why? How and why is that possible? And then I watched the credits. In the special thanks section of the credits, they mention Greg Kasavin, who is the like writer and creative director at Supergiant Games. They mention a lot of names, and some of those other names might also be Supergiant people. But then at the end, they also mention Supergiant Games. So I imagine Supergiant Games help to consult or give advice or something in some capacity. Or maybe they just love Transistor and they wanted to put it in the game, and so they let them.
Yeah.
That could be a thing.
I wonder what that relationship has to look like when indie games do that. I didn't mention it in Jack Move, but there's a reference to a game that's not even out yet that I have in my list of secret games. And I'd love to say it, but maybe I'll just save it for when I actually do that game.
Wait till later and then remind me that you brought this up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I love when these small studios collaborate. Like I love that. Very inspiring. We see special thanks sections at the end of tons of our games, and we see names that we recognize from other games.
Yeah.
And so it's a big world of indie games, but it's also a really small world where everybody kind of knows each other. So that's really inspiring. Those are our secret games, Ikachan and Falcon Age. Let's move on to our review of TOEM. It is our featured game. TOEM is a photography adventure first released in 2021. It actually just got released for Xbox consoles like last month, DiscoCola.
Oh, rad.
Yeah, July 2023 at the time of recording. So that's pretty awesome. It was developed by Something We Made, also published by Something We Made, and this is a Swedish studio, and TOEM is their debut. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "Set off on a delightful expedition and use your photographic eye to uncover the mysteries of the magical TOEM in this hand-drawn adventure game. Chat with quirky characters, solve their problems by snapping neat photos, and make your way through a relaxing landscape," end quote. TOEM is an adventure game that takes place in sort of a top-down isometric view, but the view can be rotated to see from different angles. And you can take pictures by holding up a camera, and then you see the world from the ground in the first person. So you're kind of switching between those two perspectives all the time. And you play as a young adventurer on the day of their first trek to see a magical phenomenon known as TOEM. And you don't know what TOEM is as the player, right? You're talking to your Nana, who you live with, and Nana's telling you like, oh, this is a momentous day. You know, everybody needs to see TOEM. I'm so glad you get to see TOEM.
It's your Pokemon journey. Go get your first Pokemon at the age of 10 and explore the world. Yeah,
Yes,
TOEM.
Exactly. You feel like it's a tradition in this world. And Nana is even like pulling out a photo album and like showing you TOEM, but the photo album is like facing the characters and like away from you, the player. And so you're not let in on what TOEM is. And so that's sort of the mystery of the game. Like, what is TOEM? I just know I need to go there and see it. And so before you set out, Nana gives you a gift, which is a camera. She wants you to take pictures along the way, take a picture of TOEM to remember the occasion. And all you really know is that TOEM is at the top of a mountain in a region called Kiiruberg, which is quite a long distance away. And to get there, you have to take a bus to different regions along the way. The first region you go to is Oklaville, which is a forest region. Then there's Stanam, which is a seaside and aquatic region. There's Log City, which is more urban. And then there's finally Kiiruberg, which is the snowy mountain region. And the whole game has this sort of Scandinavian-inspired look with all of its environments. And I think that's due in part to something we made being Swedish and being from that region of the world. And you can only take the bus to whatever the next location is by helping the community around you. You're given this community card in each region. And as you talk to various townsfolk and creatures, they give you tasks like fixing a power shortage or helping a scout play hide and seek, or maybe like finding bread for someone who wants to feed birds. There are times where you need to dress up and role play as something, like you have to resemble an astronaut in one level. And those are just a few examples. There are many dozens of tasks spread across all the regions in the base game. All these tasks are solved by using your camera. Many involve just taking pictures of things and maybe showing that picture to somebody. Sometimes you have to just use your viewfinder to look at things, to just find where things are, and that's good enough. And you can apply frames and filters to your camera. You can find a honk for your camera. Yeah. Dedicated like honk button, similar to like Untitled Goose Game. So that's interesting. You can flip the camera around into a selfie mode. You can find a tripod that lets you place your camera, and then you can trigger a shot from a distance. You also have a photo album, which stores all the pictures you take, and photos can be favorited if you need to quickly reference something. And there's also a compendium of all the game's animals, which you collect by taking pictures of them. So all kinds of creatures in this game that you're taking photos of. And you can also collect different outfit pieces for your character to wear. Some of them have passive effects. We also have a music player called a Hikelady, which took me a second.
Yeah, I was
when
like,
I first read that.
Hikeladies? What?
Yeah, is this some Swedish something? But obviously a play on like Walkman, right? So I think that's funny.
For those younger in the audience, a Walkman predates phones and would play cassette tapes remotely in your pocket. It was a big deal.
And as you do all these tasks in this world, you automatically collect these cassettes, and you can use the Hikelady to play various music you find. And overall, the story is very light. The gameplay revolves around going on this kind of scavenger hunt in each area, doing all these tasks, getting enough stamps on your community card to unlock the ability to use the bus to get to the next region. So that's the loop. And in 2022, something we made also created a DLC level called Basto, which continued the spirit of the game with a new area to explore. And we can talk about what makes Basto different maybe a little bit later. So, DiscoCola, I have no other intro to this. I have no additional context to consider about the game. This is a pretty recent game, and I picked it for this season as something that I just really wanted to play. And so now after playing it, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on TOEM?
Okay, Bopo, I'm going to be honest with you. Unlike Viewfinder, which is another sort of photography-ish kind of game, I wasn't really looking forward to playing TOEM, I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
I do definitely love me some cozy games, but usually the kind that have something super deep and profound. I thought that TOEM was kind of more like a cozy game that is just cozy for cozy's sake. And it isn't bad to be that, of course, but it can be the difference between like a Digimon V-Pet, which I still can find joy in, and then the like unpacking, which I still got a ton out of, and there was a lot more depth to it, and ultimately ended up getting a perfect 10 from me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the delta that can
Those are
exist
the two
in
ends.
cozy games. Overall, taken as a whole, I did find TOEM to be a bit more in the camp of cozy for cozy's sake, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy myself.
Nice.
So here's what I liked about TOEM. First up, and I'll get this out of the way now. I think we mentioned it already. I did play this on my Switch. And as such, I was able to play in situations where I was around a lot of other people. But as a result of that, to not bother anyone, I played about 80% of the game totally muted.
Oh, okay.
However, I did listen to all of the music afterwards, and I'm happy to report that the music heckin' rules. It plays super well on the radio, too.
Yeah.
And if you're the person that does the whole, like, lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to kind of thing,
Yes, pull up the TOEM soundtrack.
this is a great soundtrack for you.
Absolutely.
Turn that on and get some great work done. It's a focus goldmine. I cleaned the kitchen yesterday
Sweet.
listening to this.
Now, for doing your homework of listening to that soundtrack, did you just pull open Hikelady and go to each cassette and just play it? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I grabbed my old 10-pound cassette case and pulled out each cassette and popped it in. No, I went on YouTube and I listened to it.
Oh, that's how you did it. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know if you did it in game.
No,
Gotcha.
uh-uh.
That makes way more sense. Because I actually was in game taking some notes, and I was just pulling open
Okay.
Hikelady and playing songs. But cool.
I really do like the gameplay loop. It reminds me of a very stripped down version of Spyro. So, like, in each world, you need X amount of orbs or whatever to fight that world's boss. And you can pick any number of the world's stages to get your choice of orbs to reach that total. And then you can fight the boss. Same sort of deal here. Pick any number of the stamps that you can find and accomplish, and then you can move on to the next area.
Yeah, it's also similar to, I don't know if you've played this, but Double Fine has a game from like earlier in their catalog called Stacking.
Oh, okay.
And I remember Stacking being a lot like this. It's a very different perspective and look, but it is kind of a scavenger hunt. Like you're in sort of a closed open world and you're just looking for things on a list, on a to-do list, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a great approachable way to get players through some tasks that aren't necessarily straightforward or objective or maybe even fun sometimes. So you get to pick which ones you want to do, and I think that's great. I love the diversity of life in TOEM, and I mean that in like multiple senses of the word. First, I love finding and photographing animals pretty much more than anything else in the game. So when you first get to a zone, you can look at your compendium and you get the name of every kind of animal in a different level. And so just having that name can also sort of clue you in to where that animal might be hiding.
Yeah, you might see just ladybug and oh, I'm looking for a small bug that's probably flying around.
There's one called Itsy Bitsy. Well, I bet that's a gosh dang spider. Right?
Yeah.
And so where would a spider be? And so when I'm in sections that might contain a spider, I am stopping to look around a little bit more. But in addition to a variety of animals, I'm loving the diversity of characters we're talking to. We're interacting with street taggers, hard workers, retired stunt drivers, scientists, pretentious visual artists, and more. It makes the game feel just that much more organic. Like it's a real place that you can go and visit. I noticed an interesting level of discipline and restraint in TOEM. So each level is broken up into different screens, and on these screens you can use your right stick to spin the camera around, like you said before, to get a vantage point from different angles. However, the extent to which you can rotate around a screen is not always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Some screens you get the full 360, but in other screens you only get a small arc.
Sometimes it's like 90 degrees,
Yeah.
it feels like.
And this will basically teach you that everything you need is within that arc, or can be seen in that first person view on the edges of that arc.
So I wonder if you were eventually, when you got into a new area, were you spinning the stick to see how much you could see?
Pretty much the first thing I'm doing as soon as I get there, yeah. Or if it's one of those screens with the full 360s, something could be anywhere. Or it could be a largely unimportant screen if it's one of those full 360s. So that's just a good way to teach you where to focus. And I think that's really cool. It's using discipline and restraint to also teach you how to approach that specific screen.
Yeah, very observant, yes.
Here's something that started as a bit of a dislike but turned into a like. Certain zones require the use of certain costume elements. At first, I didn't like this because these aren't permanent upgrades, and I can't just access these smaller zones of the level at any time. not without equipping, that piece of clothing first. But I found a lot of love for this down the road because it's sort of, I'm going to say the word discipline again, created some discipline in me. It forced me to go down a particular road and ignore my instinct of opening up all of the possible tasks in the level and then just doing one big loop around the level again to complete everything all at once.
Yeah, you're kind of forced to focus.
Yeah. So being unable to access everything right at the start just sort of nudges me in a direction.
That is a good observation because I was noticing, especially as we got farther along, it might be intimidating knowing there are upwards of like 20 tasks in an area. But then when you start finding those clothing items or you start going off in a certain direction in the whole region you're in, you realize those tasks might have like categories that they sort of fit into. Like there's like 4 or 5 tasks that are very closely related. And so that's almost like a quest line, a mini quest line within the region. And I found that really a great way to split those things up.
Yeah, and you sort of, it's not something that the game like tells you.
Yeah,
but
you just sort of intuitively learn.
Pick it up.
Yes.
Yep. Here's another thing that I loved. Bo, have you heard the saying, the camera loves you?
Yes.
Right. I think you're one of those people, Bo, and I mean that, not just because we're on the recording and I want to flatter you, but I also have people very close to me that are the opposite. Anyways, I'm bringing this up because I loved coming across those characters that the camera loves. When you take a picture of that person, the result is an immaculate portrait of that character. And these are just, it's fun to discover which characters are the ones that the camera loves.
Sure. Well, it's the ones that are sparkling.
Yeah. One more thing I like, the game has an option called Help, I'm Stuck in the pause menu.
Yes.
Now, while this option may be there to prevent some issues that might still exist in the game, it can be a great way to essentially teleport. So when you select this option, it will move your character to the bus stop at the beginning of the level. This can help prevent you from retreading a lot of ground that might be tedious to go over, time and time again. If it's faster to just teleport back to the beginning to find your ultimate destination, that's just one more trick in your catalog that you can use.
Yeah, and as a marginal benefit, very handy for speedrunners too.
Oh yeah. A lot of
Who
people,
might be speedrunning
a lot of
TOEM.
speedrunners do like the save and quit thing. So this is just like cutting out that extra step. There are a few other things here and there that I like, mostly in the artistic department. But I think this is where I need to move into things that I disliked about TOEM. And first and foremost, there is a certain thing about this game that's totally borked, and it might be the Switch version only.
Okay.
But the longer I play the game, the more UI elements sort of float off their axis. And I first noticed something wrong with my like film inventory indicator that's in the corner. And it wasn't like totally readable. And I assumed at first that it was like a display issue with my television. The, newest television I have is like 10 years old, at least. But then I remembered I wasn't playing on a television. I was playing on my Switch in handheld mode. And this is like the purest form of the resolution you can get. So then I started to notice that like dialogue options were beginning to lose their alignment, and in a very extremely noticeable way.
Interesting.
This doesn't break the game in any way, but it is very noticeable, and I can't not notice it. And many times I'd rather just like turn off my game and turn it back on just to realign everything. It's a huge distraction.
That can be distracting. I played on PS5, and I honestly, in my like 7.5 hours of playing this, like the base game and the DLC and 100%ing everything, I did not see that at all. So interesting.
Can I ask how long your longest like play sessions are?
I had a play session that was probably 3.5 or 4 hours.
Okay, so it probably would have happened. This might just be a Switch version.
Interesting. Or it just happened to not happen to me, but some problems can only happen on one system too.
Yeah, but huge distraction for me. There are some recurring or multi-zone tasks to complete. In most of the cases, I actually really like these. but there are a few that are sort of like unfun to look for, namely some that become official tasks in latter levels. So,
Okay. Yeah,
um,
if you have specific examples, I wanted to hit those
right.
later. So
Yeah.
like I have some of those too, for sure.
To go off that topic a little bit, object recognition in this game is pretty imperfect. TOEM tries really, really hard to make sure you know what you're taking a picture of, what it is being recognized by the camera, and what will be recognized by NPCs. But it seems like some things will still not quite be recognized when they should be. I had this happen 2 times in particular. In one example, I was asked to take a picture of a lost snowball that was rolled down a hill.
Mm.
And I found what I thought was most obviously this snowball. And I took a picture and I turned it in, but I failed the task. So after completing a few more tasks, I spent an entire like loop or two around that whole level, which is one of the bigger ones.
It's big, yeah.
Looking
Very
for
vertical.
anything that could possibly be that snowball. I took the picture of the first thing again. I was like, I'll try again. Maybe it is, and that's what it was. Like I had the right object the first time. It just didn't pick up
Oh,
the snowball.
interesting.
Another example, we're asked to take pictures of monsters in different zones. And in the very same zone where we get that task for the first time, there is one of these monsters. And I took a picture of that creature. And when I look at it in my album, it is very clear picture of that monster.
Uh-huh.
Like subjectively speaking, it's obvious. And then I turned it in, he didn't recognize it as the monster. He was just like, that's nothing. And so it sort of threw me off my axis for like looking for monsters in future levels. Cause I was like, I was very sure that this was the monster, but it's not. And so I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm looking for.
Yeah, sometimes there's like the autofocus thing where it'll draw a box around a subject of interest, and that's how
Right.
you know whatever you're going to take a picture of is going to register whatever that item or object is in the world. It's going to associate that categorization with your picture in your album. And you know that when you show that to somebody, it's going to register if it's the right thing they're looking for.
Yeah.
And I found that this kind of goes back to something I said about Nuts, my secret game from earlier this season, where thankfully, when your boss, Dr. Nina Scholes, is looking for a certain squirrel, as long as you find the moment that that squirrel appears in a photo, the squirrel could be way in the background. As long as it's in the photo, it will register. Love that I don't have to get the perfect framing and that it's not a science that I can't figure out. In TOEM, for me, I found my experience to be closer to Nuts than your experience you had in TOEM, where I had this worry that I would get things sort of out of frame. I always tried to like frame things pretty well, but I was also sometimes wondering, is this good enough? I never had that moment where things didn't register.
Yeah, I had it happen like 2 big times that sort of like really threw me off the rest of the mission. So,
Interesting.
big bummer there. And I think that brings me to my biggest complaint, and one that I sort of anticipate for games like this. And there's just a little bit too much subjectivity. There's another saying that goes, it's the journey, not the destination.
Mm-hmm.
Not for me, man. I hate the journey. I need a destination. I hate traveling because of this. Like in the case of TOEM, the way this translates is to objectivity versus subjectivity. I'm the type of person that needs objectivity in my activities. And TOEM kind of helped me realize, why I prefer like Mega Man X over the classic series, and by a lot. Why I love collectathon games and why I love Metroidvanias.
So are you talking about like the overall goal of the game, or are you talking about the overall goal of like a region or something else?
No, it's like you're taking a picture of something and there's not like, yes, you're looking for a particular object, but there's no like one perfect way to do it. There's subjectivity, there's gray zones. You can sort of approach it in a lot of different ways.
Oh, okay.
I prefer objectivity. Like I do want that perfect.
One perfect thing.
Yeah.
But you were probably still motivated to frame things the way that you would want to see them in your album, right?
I don't know that I have that way I want to see things, frankly. Like, taking the picture is a means to an end for me. I'm not looking for a good picture to have in my album. That's not something I really care about.
You kind of wish that there was that perfect way that the game expected of you?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
But that's not a fun thing to have in a game like this, probably.
Yeah, because like the philosophy of taking pictures, maybe it's that something we made didn't see that as fitting for the area of photography.
Right.
But
And it probably shouldn't be. So like
Mhm.
this is definitely like a me problem, but I just prefer a lot more objectivity in my tasks.
sure. Yeah, that's just a personality thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when I'm playing, games like Mega Man, like yes, there's a destination at the end. I need to go beat Sigma, but like on the journey, my first task isn't beat Sigma. My first task is let's go get your dash boots. There's
Sure.
smaller destinations along the way in the overall big journey. And that exists here, but it's more nebulous, it's more free form.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not me. So yeah, like photography as a whole, there's no like one perfect way to do something. It's chaotic, it's random, and it's up to you. There's no such thing as a perfect TOEM save file at the end. Not really. Not
Okay.
in
Yeah.
the way that I look for it.
Yeah, I would probably define that as just, did you do every task? Did you find
Yep.
everything? Did you get all the trophies? And it does put a percentage
It
on
does.
your save file.
That I do love that.
Okay,
But
good.
yeah. TOEM is a game that I didn't always enjoy along the way, but very quickly taught me how to be more observant of everything around me. However, this is the kind of game that simply isn't built for someone like me. I think if I could distill this game's message and then distill this game's message 2 or 3 more levels after that, I feel like it's a piece of media telling me to live in the moment. But that's just not me. I can't afford to live in the moment for most of my life. I still enjoyed many of the chores given to me, and as an actual accurate parallel of my life, my favorite photography was the animal life. Apart from the gravitational chaos of my UI elements, all of the critiques I have are only for people that live in the desire for routine. So I can't downgrade the game too much for that, but I wasn't having too much fun while playing TOEM. For someone that needs perfect and certainty in their games, I'm living at more of a 7.5 for TOEM.
Okay. Well, I think given how you've explained your temperament and personality, that does make sense. And I'm still glad you had like overall a positive experience. For me, TOEM is a game I devoured in like just over 24 hours across just a few sessions of playing, and I adored it. I love TOEM. It feels so cozy and relaxing. This is a game that has no urgency. It is a go at your own pace sort of thing, and I found that so relaxing this time. It is that most characters are in a very good mood. They are grateful to you for helping them. It feels amazing to help all these people. And it's that kind of cheeriness and kind-heartedness that I'm always in the mood for. And it's the kind of experience that, makes me feel happier. I was walking a little taller after playing this game. It's just the nice, genuine, kind experience that sometimes I am just in the mood for, and this happened to hit at a time where I really wanted that. And so I could see this being a remedy for a bad mood I might be in. I might want to play TOEM and it might make me feel better. So then I also love the user experience of this game. Going into the menus, the user interface and the controls for me, they're all top notch. I love how the community card works. It has such a clean design. The font style is very legible, very clear. Love the consistency of it.
Has a lot of character too.
It does. It has the character of a script that's handwritten.
Yep.
Kind of like how a lot of the visuals are hand drawn. And so it just fits really well. It feels great to get a stamp for completing tasks, and you put the stamp on your card yourself and you get to arrange the stamps how you want. I was meticulously finding a pattern for those.
Yeah.
This game was really allowing me to showcase my OCD about like collection and scratching things off my to-do list and finding the right order to do things. And so that's why this game is probably like a really good fit for me, like just personality wise, going back to our interests. I love, seeing the task crossed out. It adds a great sense of accomplishment. And for the most part, I felt like I was given just enough without too much information on each task in that card. When I reread a task that I picked up maybe an hour ago, I immediately remember what was going on with that task. And I also love, on the control side, using the D-pad to give me quick access to everything I need, the community card, the tripod, the photo album, and the Hikelady. I was just, I memorized that very quickly, and I was using that to access things so efficiently. And then I love that the camera interface has those big chunky buttons with a very clean layout. Everything is very clearly labeled. I know what button does what. And it all just came to me very smoothly. And so I think TOEM is designed optimally to be extremely smooth and helpful toward the player. I wasn't fumbling with the controls of this game, and I actually expected to, based on switching between isometric, top-down, first-person, snap a photo, open your photo album, equip your clothes, check on your tasks, run to this place. It seemed like a lot, but this game handles it really well for me. And then I love the groove of discovering a task and then exploring the environment, filling out my compendium, collecting stamps, earning passage to the next region. All of it is so addicting. And again, it's my personality. Like you said, if a task stumps me, I have plenty of others to solve instead. And I might think about that task in the back of my mind while I'm working on those easier tasks. So I wasn't really getting stuck in this game too. And it's also not like you have to collect every stamp to move on to the next region. So it's very forgiving in that way. A lot of tasks cause a cascade effect when you finish them. This is that idea of some tasks are just sort of grouped together in a category where you solve something. There might be a domino effect that's really fun when like a character gives you an item that you need for another character that you already talked to.
Right.
And those revelation moments are fun. I found this game addicting. I thought about it when I wasn't playing it. I started it just before we recorded the Limbo episode. And then as soon as I got home from the Limbo episode recording, I kept playing it. I got home and I thought, what's the first thing I want to do? I have some free time. I want to go back to TOEM. The movement of your character feels satisfyingly fast. I get to where I need to go quickly and I don't really get bored of the movements.
Yeah.
So this is one of those games that, you start moving around and you immediately feel good.
Yeah, and the speed is just right.
Yeah, it's like not too fast. You can find sneakers that make you go faster. I appreciated that. The music is relaxing. It adds a comforting layer to everything you do. I give a shout out to Launchable Socks and Jamal Green, who provide the original score. Everything you already said about the score is very accurate. And then I get to some things that I didn't click with as well. And I actually have a different overall set of dislikes from you, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I just didn't think that there could be this many dislikes across both of our notes, but here are mine. So some stamps are vague and involve traveling to different regions, and that isn't always clear. That's something you kind of hinted at, and we can talk about more of that in a second. But then I actually have an issue with how some of the pictures end up looking when you take them. Very few, if any, objects or characters in the world are rendered with like crisp resolution when you snap a photo.
Yeah.
When you go into that first person mode and you take a picture of something, it can actually look really muddy and like jagged
fuzzy.
and fuzzy.
I noticed that.
And it's not like you're using autofocus to add depth to your shots. Everything just kind of has the same focus all the time, which I'm fine with. Like they don't have to get super cinematic with shallow focus. But when I'm in the isometric view, everything kind of looks sharp. And then I pull open the camera and everything through the viewfinder can just look fuzzy, like you said. So I found that a little baffling for a game about photography. And I cared about the framing of my subjects. I wanted all the photos in my album to look pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just only so much appeal I can add to a photo when they look that way in the end. And then there are very few big moments that stick with me from TOEM, right?
Yeah.
TOEM's all about doing dozens and dozens of these quirky tasks for these fun characters. And I love doing that. But at the end of it, nothing like sticks out as like a favorite moment of this season. You know, like I don't think any moment from TOEM is going to stick out as like, oh, this is one of my top 5 favorite moments from season 4.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? So my favorite moment of this game is probably just collectively playing it all in a very short amount of time. Just like the experience of TOEM, the game, is my favorite moment. And then, you know, on moments, there's the end, the TOEM moment, the thing that you are going to go see. And I found it to be anticlimactic.
I did too.
I found myself saying like, whoa, that's it? Like it's over.
Mhm.
It's over in a flash almost. And
Yeah, and like right before it, I was still like reaching this new zone. I'm like, okay, well maybe these unfinished tasks from the previous part of the level will be in the mountaintop. And I was still like focusing on that, but all of a sudden I'm taking a picture of TOEM and I'm rolling the credits. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, because I didn't even get a chance to like live in that moment either when I was there.
It's sudden. The game is building up to this from the first minute. The game is called TOEM. You know, if your game is called TOEM and no one knows what TOEM is when they start playing it, and the game even like talks about TOEM, references TOEM without showing you the player, the payoff at the end where you see TOEM should probably be worth it. And I just didn't find it worthwhile. I thought it was just brief and it felt like maybe something was missing. And I get like the phenomenon. I understand like that's an interesting idea for a surprise, but in execution, I guess it wasn't as like full of a moment as I expected. But overall, TOEM is a wholesome breath of fresh air for me. I love collecting and checking things off my list, and here's a game about doing just that with a slick and intuitive UI that looks very polished. There are few big moments that will stick with me, but I will always remember TOEM for the warm feeling it gave me. It is one of my favorite scavenger hunt likes, if I may drop that as a genre suggestion.
New genre, yeah.
So I'm going to rate this a 9.
That's what
out
I
of 10.
guessed. Yeah.
Sweet. This is one that, again, I picked because it was one I wanted to play for this season. I just really wanted to play it. And, you know, it might not live on in my heart as profoundly, as like deeply as other games, but I'm still thinking about it. I still like just love the idea of this game. And one thing this game reminded me of was Chicory: A Colorful Tale.
Of course.
And this comes to mind because we so recently played this, where Chicory is a game about a black and white world, and you're interacting with the world using a visual art form. But instead of photography, it is painting, right? It is like using your brush to color things in. And TOEM is all about photography. So I'm curious, since we did play these two in such close proximity, what gameplay conceits are you most taken with from either game and why?
Ooh. They don't really like in execution feel the same. Like when I think about playing TOEM versus playing Chicory, I'm in a different mindset. Like I did talk a lot about subjectivity in this episode, and like if I apply that to Chicory: A Colorful Tale, painting the world in itself is like very subjective. There's no one correct way to paint the world in there. You just have to paint it so that you can get to where you need to go. And whatever you decide is the correct look and color combination is up to you.
And we kind of talked about how neither of us fell in love with how we made the world look after we were done with Chicory.
Right.
And yeah, part of it is just like, maybe we're not in love with the controls. Part of it is maybe we just don't like the limited colors that we have offered to us. But maybe it's just that we want to do the activity. We want to do the mission, you know, and just we're using the paint as a means to get to the objective.
And that's kind of, I kind of am treating it the same in that sense, I guess.
So you see like the similarity there.
Yeah. I guess now that you're making me think about it, we do see characters change kind of in both games, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more obvious in Chicory. You know, we see Peppermint or whatever that bird's name was show up a lot of times in different places. You know, our sisters in different places at different times. In TOEM, you know, some characters change where they are after you complete their task. You know,
Sure.
we talk to Granny and we do her mission, which stumped me for a while. But after we do her mission, she's no longer, standing where you met her, but she's driving the streets.
Yeah, she's the one who
in
crashed
Log
the
City.
car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's when she shows up in traffic and
Yeah.
you can walk across the crosswalk and she stops in front of you. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah,
Nice
it's
little
great
detail.
to see her in there. And there's other characters that like change permanently based on finishing their task and interacting with them. So I guess there's similarity there too that I really appreciate.
I think if I had to like choose a gameplay style between both, I think I prefer the photography of TOEM more to the painting of Chicory.
Yeah.
Because the painting in Chicory got tiresome. I think I was using that paintbrush almost every screen, and just my control scheme of using the controller, it got tiring to flick that control stick to get it to the area I want the paintbrush to paint. And again, it might be easier on PC for that particular experience. But the photography, at least on PS5, kind of felt like the right amount of changing my main activity, where I'm running around most of the time, but then I need to pull out that camera. But it's not like a nuisance. It feels seamless. On PlayStation, there's even like great DualSense integration where when you press on the trigger, it feels like you're pressing down on a shutter of a stills
interesting.
camera,
Huh.
where you hold it down halfway and it still hasn't taken the picture, and then you give it the full click. There's resistance. So I liked the feeling of that in here. And so it's something that I just didn't really want to put down. I also find photography just like to be more immediately relevant to my life.
Yeah.
I don't find as much interest in painting,
Me either.
but yeah, we both have done stuff with cameras more in like our careers and stuff. And then, we mentioned the DLC level Basto. How does it work and what do we think about Basto? So what's going on in Basto, DiscoCola?
Basto is an extra level that at first I wasn't expecting. First of all, didn't know it was in the game.
Yeah, I don't think I did either.
Second, has the largest number of tasks to complete.
Yes, like
as
20.
just as a number.
Yeah.
But essentially, Basto is a vacation spot that after you beat the game, Nana's like, we should go on a vacation, take a break. Come on, man. I have 2 tickets to Basto. Join me,
Right.
essentially. And so we have to find our way to Basto through another zone first, which is an interesting way to get there. But yeah, Basto's just another level. The thing about it that's pretty unique is that it has day and night mechanics, which no other level has. So you have to manipulate a day and night cycle to adjust the tides, and that can change how you actually traverse through the level.
Yeah, it makes different events happen. There are like ladders that will become submerged in water when it's daytime, and then you have to, make the night happen so that recedes. And then some characters will only show up in the night or only show up in the day.
Mhm.
So that's very interesting. And I thought that sounded annoying. I was like, oh, I don't want to switch back and forth. But they put like cots and beds all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's easy to fall asleep and change that time of day. I personally loved the sheer variety and the size of this one.
Yeah, I was really daunted. I got to the end of the game. I had plenty of time to play TOEM. I've been working on it for like almost 2 months at this point, just slowly chipping away. And I waited until like Wednesday of this week to beat what I thought was the last level of TOEM.
Like, oh, surprise, here's another 4 hours.
And
or
then I was
something.
like,
Yeah,
oh my
3
God,
hours.
20 tasks.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was really nervous, but it actually goes very quickly. Like a
Mhm.
lot of these tasks are really short compared to what I was used to in the base game.
Yeah. And a lot of tasks you're just quickly working on while you're working on other tasks. Like one of the tasks is popping balloons, and another one is watering dry plants. And those are just sort of spread all around.
Yeah.
And you naturally work on those 2 tasks while you're doing everything else. You also play carnival games. You look for different fruit. You make different ice cream that you just give to people. And so it's a good flow of like multitasking
Hmm.
in that one. So yeah, I liked Basto, and I thought it was different enough to like warrant, DLC. On the home screen, on the title screen of the game, there's like your main save file that takes up like a little rectangle space. And then under that is Basto. And then there's like an empty space under Basto, and I'm wondering if
Ooh, I
like
didn't notice
they're
that.
reserving that for another DLC piece in case they have the time and resources to do it. Thought that was maybe not promissory, but maybe suggestive.
Yeah, there was something like that in Mega Man 11. Ultimately, nothing came of it.
Oh,
but,
dang.
yeah.
They're just like saving the space in case.
Yeah.
Just in case. And then let's go to those elusive stamps that stumped us. What maybe did you have to look up, or what did you spend a lot of time on?
Yeah, I remember Granny taking me a long time to figure out. I don't remember what the solution is because that was one that I probably did like a month ago at this point.
Yeah, I played this game much more recently than you. I don't remember that solution either, but it took me a while.
Yeah, the artist gallery, the gallery mission where we needed to take a picture of something distorted
Yes.
for the visual artist doing his art show. No clue, you know,
Right.
took a bunch of pictures of whatever. And like, I don't even recall him asking me for something distorted. He just said, you know, he asked me for like a unique piece of art. So this is the same level that has a lot of street tags. It has this cool painting that is like on the fronts of the steps of the escalator.
Mhm.
Like there's so much cool stuff to take a picture of. He hates all of it.
Right.
And then I have to read the like community card and it says take a picture of something distorted, but that still doesn't conjure anything in my mind.
Right.
So I had to
And
look that one up too.
You end up having, I mean, I'm going to spoil what you do here. So just so people know, but it's just one task in the game. You end up having to use a filter that you get, right? You have to use the distortion filter. And
Oh, is that right?
You can just take a picture of anything with that filter.
Oh, I don't know if I even knew about that. I got
Oh.
my camera muddy and took a picture of him.
Oh, and that works too?
That works.
Oh, so this is kind of like Return of the Oberdin, where you're given like a puzzle, but there are multiple solutions because they logically make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this gets into another complaint I have, which is where like the game introduces these like filters and frames, and I don't really want to use them. I don't feel enticed to use them, like the additional brush styles in
Mhm.
Chicory.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting when tasks ask you to use them, so then you're forced to go out of your way. But it also doesn't happen often enough that I'm trained to know to think about that too.
Right.
Like every world might have one task to use those frames and filters. And I
Yeah.
guess like they could have like committed to that more consistently.
And so can I ask you another question about that since we had a different experience with that particular task? Did you have to name that photo when you turned it in? Because when I turned it in the first time, he was like, I don't, you know, you need to name it. I'm not interested unless it has a unique title.
Yeah, I remember one task where I had to name a photo, and that could have been it. And I named it something like, you know, submission or photo.
I named mine 404. I was just like,
Yeah,
whatever.
right. It doesn't matter.
didn't
Just as
matter.
long as it has a name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, what else? I don't know. Just some of those like multi-level ones were like hard to find. Like I mentioned the forest monster that I thought I had found and did in fact find, but just failed to register. The mystery person being tracked by the, you know, military or whatever.
Yes.
I had a hard time finding him in one of the levels.
Yeah. Finding that guy is so funny because his eyes are just like so expressive and
Yeah.
like he's so mysterious. In Stan Am, I had an issue with a task called a whistling dilemma. And this is where there are two musicians who need inspiration
hmm
and whom you eventually pair up. But before that, you need to help one of them like get an idea for a melody. And I ran around that whole level for like 40 minutes looking for what that could mean. And it ended up being that there was like this sailor whistling.
Yeah.
And I had to take a picture of the sailor whistling because there were music notes coming out of his lips. It's like, that's kind of a stretch. I
Yeah.
never would have thought of that. That's one I definitely looked up. And then in Log City, there's someone stuck in the sewer. And
Yeah.
to get them out, you have to point your camera at a cosmic cube. And we haven't mentioned this, but cosmic cubes are these weird items that you take pictures of, and then they alter something in the area of the map you're in that moment.
Yeah.
And in this particular instance, there was a cosmic cube just like way above me, and I never would have looked up there. And you don't know what the cosmic cubes are going to do. when
Yeah, you
snap
don't
pictures
even
of them.
like get information about the cosmic cubes
Right.
until the last level
Yeah,
too.
they're very like fictional and weird and like unpredictable. And then the last one I had a tough time with was Kiiruberg, the last area in the base game, the ancient paintings one, where you're taking pictures of like the cave paintings. You have to take like 5 or 6
Oh,
pictures
yeah.
of these paintings on the wall. And we talked about the phenomenon of TOEM being at the peak of this mountain. And that's kind of a different area. That's like a different region. And one of the cave paintings is there,
Yeah.
not in the big level that you found the other paintings. And that's another one where I ran around for like half an hour, 45 minutes looking for this cave. I was driving myself crazy.
I did the same thing.
I was taking like pictures of the same cave paintings and trying to show them to the person.
Yeah.
And there's no hint or indication that that last painting is where TOEM is. So I found that frustrating because it's
Yeah.
like, you're misleading me. You're making me think, you're training me to think all this stuff is in this area, not the next region.
Yeah. And I mean, like, after the fact, it kind of makes sense because it's building the story of the TOEM phenomenon.
That is fair.
But,
Right.
like, we don't know what the TOEM phenomenon is. So,
Yeah.
of course, we're going to spend
I
a lot
don't
of time
know-
looking.
I don't know what the next region is. I actually thought TOEM was going to happen in Kiiruberg.
I did
I
too.
didn't think I'd have to take the bus again.
Yeah.
So I was just confused. But then I'm curious, you talked about your favorite activity being like filling out that compendium of creatures.
Mhm.
But when it comes to stamps, do you have like a certain kind of stamp that you enjoyed doing the most?
I think the ones that are just moderately vague, like take a picture of a wall of lights.
Mm,
And it's just like, oh, okay. It's asking me to look at objects in sort of these artful ways
Yeah.
instead of
you have to kind of interpret the world in a new way.
yeah. And so I'm taking a minute to stop every time I remember I have this task. I'm like, oh, is there anything here that maybe applies to some of those more vague photo challenges or something? So I think the photo challenges, with a couple of exceptions, are really cool and creative, and make me think about the world in a different way. Even though I expressed a lot of frustration with the forest monster, I do like those ones that were given early on that span multiple regions, as opposed to ones that were given late in the game that expand multiple regions.
Mhm.
So I don't really, the Cosmic Cube ones feel like a slap in the face at the end of the game, whereas like finding the monsters and finding the mysterious character are more enjoyable to me.
Yeah, you're given ample notice about some of those earlier ones. You know, you get into the groove of looking for that monster in each area. And like when you see a weird monster, you go, oh, that's got to be this area's
Yeah.
monster. Yeah.
And then I think I really like the ones where you're asked to take a picture of someone in motion at a specific moment in time. So like skateboarders, or the frolicking lady at the beginning of whatever the seaside town
Yeah,
is.
Stan Am.
Yeah.
Yes. And like even Basto has one of those
Yep.
at the very beginning.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are fun too. Yeah. I really like those photo challenges with the scouts. They're asking for very straightforward things. And it almost becomes like a I Spy game where it's
Yeah.
just like, find the snowman, find the igloo or whatever. But then they also give you a good mixture of those ambiguous tasks, like find the wall of lights. Love that they give you a combination of those at the same time. And then the more I played TOEM, the more I started to understand the logic of what the game would ask from me.
Mm-hmm.
Like the earlier stages, I'm getting into the groove of like how tasks are coming to me. But then by the end, I started proactively taking pictures of things before I knew I needed pictures of those things, because I just sort of assumed, I bet someone's going to want a picture of the moon because someone in an earlier level wanted a picture of the sun. And so there were some instances where I like saved myself time.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I got into a new area and I'm taking pictures of things. So like, did you find that
Oh, yeah.
your behavior was changing a little bit?
Totally.
Okay.
You start to pick up on what are important objects
Mhm.
in the level, and you just take a picture of it, and if it doesn't, manifest in any sort of task, all you lost were like 2 seconds to take that photo.
Totally. Yeah. Because you can easily delete the photo. It's not a huge amount of effort. So I'm just like taking pictures of anything that stands out as interesting. And then maybe it's a good chance someone will want it somewhere.
Yeah.
That's all I had on TOEM. Did you have any other stray thoughts about this game?
No, I don't want you to take away, I had a lot of like things that I didn't like about TOEM and I expressed those things. But I don't want you to think that I had like a super bad time with TOEM. And I even got to, play the last level with my 3-year-old hanging out in the room. And they now call it the snow game. So,
oh, that's sweet. Love that.
I'll always carry that with me at the very least.
That's cool. Well, that is our review of TOEM. You can play it on PC, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. DiscoCola rated it a 7.5. I rated it a 9. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast services such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Onimochi. Underplayed is on formerly Twitter at UnderplayedPod. You can find me on formerly Twitter at Bopo. That's BO_PO. And check out that same handle on the GG app where you can see my game lists, such as my top 100 games of all time, indie games and AAA games and everything in between.
And I am at DiscoCola on all of those platforms, including the GG app, where I will be starting a list of games with trailers that made me buy the game.
Oh,
sight unseen. And
that's fun.
Look for Underplayed Podcast on Twitch, where we are done with our cooperative play of our next featured game, but maybe we'll start playing our Season 5 co-op game, and you can get a little preview of what that will be by tuning into our Twitch channel.
Yes. Next time, we will have 2 more secret games to review, and our last featured game of the season will be that co-op game we played on Twitch, Cuphead, a run-and-gun game developed by Studio MDHR. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.